Good evening. My name is Ismail Khan, and I'd like to welcome you to the 2019 City Council Forum hosted this year by the class of 2020. As active members of this community, it is our duty to be informed and knowledgeable voters. Tonight, we are here to demonstrate and apply our knowledge of city government to this year's election. And before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the tremendous work of the current council and mayor. Thank you for your service. Tonight, each candidate will be responding to 5 questions from the question committee, each pertaining to a concern within the city. These 5 questions are listed in your programs. The order of the candidate response was chosen by random. All questions were given in advance, so candidates could respond efficiently. Each candidate gets 7 minutes to respond to all 5 questions, then an additional minute to make a closing remark. I would now like to introduce the candidates running for council. Please stand when your name is called. Charles Blevins, Steve Gary, Tony Lally, Daniel Lloyd, Dennis Marcos, David Michael Miller, Chad Morrow, Gary Schlack, Robert L. Stites, Pam Syke, and Matthew E. Valerius. Each of you will now get a total of 7 minutes to respond to the 5 questions. Order was chosen randomly before appearing on stage. First up, we have David Michael Miller.
My name is David Michael Miller. I'm an Allen Park resident my entire life. Grew up here, left here and joined the Marines, did my time with that. I feel like that's why I'd be a good candidate. You know, I've learned a lot of leadership skills in the Marines. But besides that, one thing I just want to kind of break the ice with, just in case everyone knows that Allen Park is named after Lewis Allen, who is a lumber mill guy and a lawyer. Just a little tidbit of information. And also, Allen Park became a city in 1957. You know what else happened in 1957? The Lions won the national championship. So that's always a good thing to keep in mind. You know, we have that, and now the Lions practice in Allen Park. So that's I think bodes well for us, and I think this is going to be a fun night. So why don't we get started?
In November, residents of Allen Park will be asked to consider a ballot proposal regarding marijuana establishments within the city limits. What is your position on the proposal?
My position on the marijuana dispensaries and the micro businesses is I support it. I support it for a few different reasons. For one, I'm not worried about the dangers. A lot of people are worried about if there's going to be more danger coming through to Allen Park because of it, which I think that's unfounded. I don't think there's going to be more traffic out there, you know, more people driving around under the influence, because that happens already. It's not going to be anything new. And the other thing is that people are worried about kids having access to it. Well, right now it's already illegal for kids to use alcohol and cigarettes and stuff like that. And it's illegal for them to use marijuana in dispensaries anyway. So I don't think that passing this and allowing it, you know, better for the people that do choose to do that, you know, we shouldn't be punishing them for it. And also, what it basically boils down to is personal freedoms. We all have personal freedom to make choices in our lives, and we shouldn't have government making choices, and for the rest of the country, we are making great strides in this area where we actually are recognizing and allowing people to live their life and live their own lifestyle decisions without being constantly bombarded by different things in their life and getting held back by it. And I think this is just a way to have, let people live a certain lifestyle to live their life without, restrictions. And so what basically boils down to personal freedoms is why I do it. And as far as the revenue goes, yes, Allen Park will get some more extra revenue from it. I don't think it's going to be some great, boon, and all of a sudden we're going to have, everyone's going to be rolling in money and everything. But I do think we are at the beginning of a budding industry, and if we have the opportunity to get in on basically on the ground floor on it, I think maybe not right away, maybe not within the 4 years that I'd be here, but I'll be in Allen Park the rest of my life, but I think we'll see a huge growth in this part of the economy for a long time, and I think that we'd be remorse not to take advantage of the opportunity we have here in Allen Park.
The issue of shared services isn't new to the Downriver area or Allen Park in specific. Do you support a movement towards shared services for police and fire at this time?
Well, the shared services, we have shared waste management and stuff like that in our city, and part of that, one thing I don't like about it, when you need to call something, you have a problem with the waste pickup or something like that, you call the city hall and they tell you to call this other company, you call the other company and no one answers the phone. I don't like that. That's kind of irritating. I know, it's probably not every single time, but in my experience, every time I've needed them, it's been really hard to get a hold of them. So it's kind of like that separation, and I'd be really worried about if the police and fire became that kind of separate from the city, because I don't want the citizens of the city to start looking at the police as other than themselves. And I also, and vice versa, I don't want the police to start thinking they're separate from the city. We should include them in, they are a part of our community, and they should remain that way. And I think that removing them and having shared services with other cities and stuff like that, I think that would serve to separate the police more, and I don't think that would be a good thing.
Allen Park has been plagued with basement flooding for decades. As a city council member, what will you do to alleviate this ongoing problem?
Well, I definitely remember growing up, and I had the basement bedroom. Actually, no, I didn't have the basement bedroom. My brother did, and I always wanted a basement bedroom. And the basement flooded, so we got to tear out the entire basement. My brother didn't want to have to go through that, so I gave him my room upstairs, and I got to help clean up the basement, and I got the basement room. So I'm a proponent for flooding, though. But that was when I was a kid in my parents' house. Now I have my own house in Allen Park, and I was one of the lucky ones that my water main was repaired last year or the year before. So this most recent bout of floodings, my basement didn't flood. Not saying I'm so lucky, but we are making strides. Allen Park is making strides. We are repairing, we are doing things to improve these streets, but even if we just had this huge influx of money, it's still going to take time to repair the infrastructure that was built in, the 1950s? Probably around when the Lions won the last Super Bowl. So, we are making strides on it. I think I will do everything I can to keep it going, to keep doing what we have been doing, and just making sure it doesn't slow down and we don't spend funds frivolously elsewhere and we don't get it completed.
What do you feel is the most pressing issue facing Allen Park in 2020?
We kind of already covered what I needed. I think the most pressing issue, the one that people care most about, is the flooding and the subsequent trash pickup the next day. I think that needs to be a little quicker and more taken care of a lot faster, and I'll do everything I can to make sure that happens. And then also, not necessarily the most, maybe it is the most pressing, the dispensaries. I think that's probably why I would assume a lot of people are here, because it is kind of in the zeitgeist now with our entire country and everything else, and I think it's very interesting that we have that opportunity here in our city that probably a lot of you grew up in, that lived here a long time. So I think that is probably the most pressing issue and probably the most interesting issue we have going right now.
Discuss a key difference that exists between you and your opponents that you would like voters to consider on election day.
Well, there's a few things. I don't know about one specific thing. I don't know about everyone on the board here that we're going up for council, but I am a lifelong Allen Park resident. I grew up here. I grew up here and spent my entire life here except for my time in the Marines. And Besides that, I'm going to care about the city because my family and my friends, all my friends live here. Not all my friends, but most of them. So, and also, I don't really have any political affiliation starting out, so I'd like to, I'll be a voice of the people, not a voice of any one political party.
Thank you. Now we will have Chad Morrow.
Hello everybody, thanks for coming up. My name is Chad Morrow. One thing I'll let you know real quick and first and foremost about me is I am not a lifelong Allen Parker. In fact, I'm a relatively new resident to Allen Park. I've been here almost a full year now, and with that said, I think that I offer not only a new face, but a new perspective and new ideas. And with that said, I think upon my election, going forward, we can take some new ideas and merge them together with traditions of old and go forward in unison. We are limited for time, so I'd like to get to the questions though.
In November, residents of Allen Park will be asked to consider a ballot proposal regarding marijuana establishments within the city limits. What is your position on the proposal?
I'm on record in being in support of the proposal, but not only am I in support of it, I'm one of the founders of the committee that put this proposal on the ballot this year. With that said, upon passing this, Allen Park would be able to repurpose real estate. They'd be able to attract investment to our city, and we'd be able to create jobs and provide needed services to the city's residents. I think that upon passing this, the proposal can only be fully implemented if the council adheres to the intent of the electorate. As a member of the council, I would shepherd the proposal through the process of lawmaking and keep true to the will of the people of Allen Park. I have limited time. My position on this issue is very well known. If anybody has any direct questions, feel free to contact me on this.
The issue of shared services isn't new to the Downriver area or Allen Park in specific. Do you support a movement towards shared services for police and fire at this time?
Well, when we make a big change to anything in the city structure, we really need to evaluate whether or not it brings a greater service, a less service, or about equal service. Because Allen Park's neighboring communities are so close and there are major avenues of travel for the emergency services, I believe sharing services with our partner cities and townships will not only save money, but be able to do so without a major change in response time or efficiency. However, I would like to suggest that upon doing such a thing, we would form a board of the chiefs, unions, experts in such categories to actually make these decisions. That way we can guarantee that we are actually making decisions that are going to provide the same level of safety without sacrificing safety in order to save a few bucks.
Allen Park has been plagued with basement flooding for decades. As a city council member, what will you do to alleviate this ongoing problem?
Well, first we need to recognize that this problem is not exclusive to Allen Park. This infrastructure problem is everybody's downriver. We can join with our fellow downriver communities. We can share expenses and contract an engineering firm to diagnose problems locally and regionally. They can offer solutions which are based on sound science, and with that recommendation we can apply for federal grant money, state-based matching funds programs, and other sources of municipal funding. But our solutions have to evolve past the patch and pray techniques of past and move forward, and we need wisely invested funds designed to secure long-term relief for property owners and the residents here in Allen Park.
What do you feel is the most pressing issue facing Allen Park in 2020?
One of the issues I would say that are most pressing is the lack of some opportunities. And when I say lack of opportunities, I mean things such as employment opportunities, recreational opportunities, and things that will just lead to an all-in-all lack of safety and happiness. It's a fact that we cannot just tax ourselves out of any problems like this as well. So we find solutions which do not require taxpayer dollars in order to be successful. For instance, let's just say we need a new playground. Why don't we, for example, look to our corporate partners in town and have a fundraiser for that playground? If we need emergency road repair, let's employ grant writers to find us the state, county, and federal funds America makes available to us. Let's not be afraid to declare a state of emergency when the flooding happens, and open up those avenues for citizens to seek assistance and loans from the state when the citizens need home repairs. Our citizens are used to doing a lot with less. Our city government has to have the same philosophy as well.
Discuss a key difference that exists between you and your opponents that you would like voters to consider on election day.
Well, the key difference, and I alluded to it in the beginning, is I'm a bold outsider. I'm an entrepreneur who has a vested interest in making the city succeed. I embrace this role wholeheartedly. When you want fresh solutions to lingering problems, you truly need fresh eyes. The city needs someone who doesn't say, it's always been that way, and it's always going to be this way. I'm a guy who will ask, why is it that way? What can we do to make this better? Many cities in Michigan struggle because they have relationships with protected contractors whose value and efficiency are no longer the best available in the said market. Let's look really hard at some of those long-term contracts. Let's evolve away from the always been and he's a nice guy and move into this is better and get the best deal for our citizens. Let's challenge the norms and create new standards. We need fresh people to embrace fresh ideas. Now let's be clear, Allen Park is a great character, a charm and a personality that's a great one as a matter of fact. I don't want to change anything about that, just how we do a few things. I'm an enthusiastic guy. I can be an engine of change. As part of the council, if my ideas for improvement don't live up to the city's history, my fellow council members elected will keep me in check. All the candidates running for this position are well worthy, but I truly believe I provide a perspective many do not. Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Robert L. Stites.
Good evening. I want to ask you all to think about why you go to vote and where do you want to see our city in 2 years. I am Robert Stites, and I'm running for City Council. I've lived in Allen Park since 1955, and I have many of the same concerns that you do. My goal isn't to tell you what you want to hear, but to be honest and fair. Providing our residents with an open door policy, I am planning a monthly informal gathering time at a local restaurant for folks to come visit, ask questions, and to voice their concerns.
Allen Park has been plagued with basement flooding for decades. As a city council member, what will you do to alleviate this ongoing problem?
The flooding problem is region-wide. The city of Allen Park experienced a large water event this past May. Through no fault of this city, all equipment was working at full capacity. The city of Allen Park is one of 13 downriver communities in the Downriver Utility Wastewater Authority. I will work with this authority, our neighboring communities, and representatives to find a solution to the problem. This will not happen overnight. Since the event, engineers, mayors, and supervisors have been meeting to find a solution. I will lobby our federal and state representatives to aid in finding a solution to the problem. A near-term solution would be for a homeowner to install sump pumps. This would slow down the filling of the retention units and dissipate water into the backyards. Unfortunately, there is no clear answer, but rest assured that I will work with everyone to determine the best course of action to be taken for all citizens.
In November, residents of Elm Park will be asked to consider a ballot proposal regarding marijuana establishments within the city limits. What is your position on the proposal?
I'm sorry, would you repeat the question?
In November, residents of Elm Park will be asked to consider a ballot proposal regarding marijuana establishments within the city limits. What is your position on the proposal?
This is not a city proposal, this is a citizens' referendum. I am adamantly opposed to the marijuana dispensaries in our city. There is no proof that opening these establishments will do anything more than entice a criminal mind to come to our city for whatever reason. These dispensaries, and I use that term loosely, are a cash business, which makes them a target for people with less than honorable intentions. Plus, these dispensaries pay little or no tax, so no additional funds to the city to pay for the need for additional police officers. Official data from the University of Colorado, Denver raises concerns that youth are being exposed to much more potent marijuana products, which can harm their developing brain. Neighborhoods with one or more medical or recreational dispensaries saw increased crime rates that were between 26 and 1,452% higher than neighborhoods without commercial marijuana activity. There is nothing that proves that by opening this type of establishment will make our city safer.
The issue of shared services isn't new to the Downriver area or Allen Park in specific. Do you support a movement towards shared services for police and fire at this time?
At this time, there are already shared services. It's called mutual aid. In case of an emergency, any city downriver can request assistance, whether it is a police or a fire incident. However, if this question is leading towards consolidating services, that would be a dangerous road to travel. If services are consolidated between multiple cities, in all probability, it would increase response time for police, fire, and ambulance service, and we would lose the opportunity to govern ourselves. Our current fire and ambulance response time is 4 minutes. How long might it take if that ambulance or fire rescue squad was coming from Lincoln Park or Taylor? It could be the difference between life and death.
Discuss a key difference that exists between you and your opponents that you would like voters to consider on Election Day.
What makes me different from the other candidates is my employment experience as a police officer in the city of Allen Park for over 35 years. And I have continued to serve and volunteer on various commissions and committees in the city. I have firsthand knowledge with the budget process, contract negotiations, and the art of compromise.
We now have Tony Lally.
Good evening and welcome to this forum. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Hello, my name is Tony Lally. I was born and raised in Italy until the age of 11. I have lived in Allen Park for 36 years. My wife and I were blessed with 2 children, a daughter and a son. They attended the Allen Park schools that participated in activities that our city offers as well. We were also blessed with a granddaughter who's 4 years old now. I am a retired master carpenter by the trade from Ford Motor Company and was an active member of the UAW Local 245 for over 30 years and still participate. I am an honorably discharged veteran that proudly served my country. I served 2 tours in Vietnam in the Navy Seabees as a construction battalion from 1968 to 1970. I was previously elected to Allen Park City Council as Mayor Pro Tem. When the mayor resigned, I was moved up to serve as mayor the rest of my term. I've been actively involved in and served on the boards of many community organizations currently and previously.
In November, residents of Allen Park will be asked to consider a ballot proposal regarding marijuana establishments within the city limits. What is your position on the proposal?
I am for the citizens of Allen Park. Whatever the citizens decide on November the 5th, I will make sure that the ordinances are enforced to place businesses in established areas.
The issue of shared services isn't new to the Downriver area or Allen Park in specific. Do you support a movement towards shared services for police and fire at this time?
The police and fire are doing an excellent job in our city. For those of you that may not know, we already have mutual aids between the surrounding cities. The residents and seniors of Allen Park find comfort in seeing an Allen Park police or fire patch on the sleeve of those first responders when they answer a call. So my answer is no.
Allen Park has been plagued with basement flooding for decades. As a city council member, what will you do to alleviate this ongoing problem?
As you know, this is not just a Allen Park issue. It is a Wayne County issue as well. We need to establish a clear line of communication with the county in maintaining the equipment and keeping the debris and drainage areas cleared and maintained as well.
What do you feel is the most pressing issue facing Allen Park in 2020?
I feel there are several pressing issues I would like to address beyond 2020. My priorities are to be more business friendly, enforce the ordinances regarding blight within the city, continue improving our infrastructure, and keep our community safe. All this enhances our home values.
Discuss a key difference that exists between you and your opponents that you would like voters to consider on election day.
The difference between the other candidates and myself is my previous experience on city council. All my leadership experience throughout my life community, such as Knights of Columbus, the Kiwanis, other organizations as well, serving Meals on Wheels to our seniors. I love the city, and my heart is for the citizen and making sure the community is lifted up, is safe, and keep Allen Park moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Dennis Marcos.
Hi, my name is Dennis Marcos, and I am a longtime Allen Park resident. I grew up here, went to Englewood School, if any of you remember that. Arno, South Junior High, before it was a middle school, and of course, right here, Allen Park High School. My wife and her family, my wife's maiden name is Schaefer. That might ring a bell for some of you. Her great-grandfather was George Schaefer. He was village president before Allen Park became a city here in Allen Park. He was village president, and of course they had the Schaefer Farm, which was a big part of Allen Park. So we do have a lot of interest here in Allen Park.
In November, residents of Allen Park will be asked to consider a ballot proposal regarding marijuana establishments within the city limits. What is your position on the proposal?
Oh, it's as a council person, we're guided by the citizens, and what they decide is what they want here. My opinion is, you know, it's been legalized. We voted 57% for it to legalize it. Did we vote to have 6 stores and lounges in the city? Well, that's another situation. And I don't have a problem with the legalization. I think it's fine. People do what they want to do, and that's okay. But I believe that there's a reason all these cities have opted out of it at this point in time. This is not going to go away, and we have time. We don't have to jump into this, be the first city around to have it. We need to wait and see what the rules are. We know, we've already sat and figured out the income, and I'm all for income for the city. It's not going to be very great. When you see the circle and what it's divided up into, it's a very small amount of revenue income. But it's a time thing. It's not going to go away, so we have time to look at it. Let's not jump into it, but let's look at it responsibly and then take it from there.
The issue of shared services isn't new to the Downriver area, or Allen Park in specific. Do you support a movement towards shared services for police and fire at this time?
I've had some experience with the phone program here, going to Wyandotte and wherever and that, so that part of the shared services wasn't a really good experience. Allen Park had a terrific fire and police department, there's no question about it. Everybody knows that who lives here. The only way I would entertain ideas of shared services is if it would increase response time and it's fiscally responsible for us, if it makes sense for us. Other than that, I don't see it.
Allen Park has been plagued with basement flooding for decades. As a city council member, what will you do to alleviate this ongoing problem?
Well, as everybody has said, it's an ongoing problem. It's not just Allen Park. As citizens, we've got to look at everything that we can do to help with our flooding, again, with the sump pumps that has been previously mentioned, not blocking our drains up in our houses. There's a lot of other circumstances that are working against us. The more cement we put in, the water has to drain somewhere. It's not going anywhere. So, this infrastructure is 60, 70 years old, and it's just a time-consuming thing, and it's something that we have to deal with as we go along. And I think Allen Park at this point has done as much as they can with what they've been allowed to do. So it's a matter of working with the county, the state, getting what funds we can get, and continually working on it and getting it fixed.
What do you feel is the most pressing issue facing Allen Park in 2020?
I don't know if this is so much an issue as it is a problem. We had an election, a primary election in August. 12% of our voters came out. For me, the most pressing issue is getting the people in this city involved, getting you to the voting booths, we need your say. We need to hear from you. We need you to be involved. I said it in my other report that we can't just all be spectators. I've been retired for 11 years. I don't need to do this. I'm doing this because it's time to get involved and get something done.
Discuss a key difference that exists between you and your opponents that you would like voters to consider on Election Day.
I think everybody here has pretty much the same ideas. We all want what's right for Allen Park. We all want to do what we can to help the city and make it the way we want it to be, the way the citizens want. I'm no different. My family's been here forever. My wife's family forever. We just want the best for Allen Park. And if I'm old school, yeah, I'm old school, definitely. But it doesn't stop me from thinking new. So that's the only thing I can tell you.
Thank you. Now we will have Steve Gary.
Good evening, I'm Steve Gary. I ran for City Council 8 years ago. Didn't run last time in the election because I had a commitment with work. I was on the afternoon shift. I wasn't able to run at that time. So now that I've had some time freed up, I'm putting my name out there again. And I'm a fiscal conservative. I'm a constitutionalist. I believe in God. I'm a Christian. I care about the city. I'm third generation Allen Park here in my family. Where I just decided to buy my house should say something because I care a lot about the community to call this place my home and buy a house to invest in the community. And again, my specialties with work is managing multi-million-dollar budgets, balancing budgets, and buildings and infrastructure.
In November, Residents of Allen Park will be asked to consider a ballot proposal regarding marijuana establishments within the city limits. What is your position on the proposal?
Well, I certainly support what the voters in Allen Park vote for. If they decide to vote yes on this, and if I'm in the council, I'll do what I can do to see that we can implement this in a manner that makes sense and is safe for our community and safe for our citizens. Personally, right now, the state voted, the voters in our state voted to legalize marijuana. However, I think we're going 0 to 60 on this way too fast before the states even set up their rules and what have you on this. Personally, what I would have done is I would have probably maybe proposed this at the city council level to where we could have probably done our due diligence and looked at some surrounding communities that do have these establishments and to see how it has affected property values and, you know, whether it's affected crime, yes or no. But I think at this point in time, personally, I think it's prematurely to move forward on this until we do our due diligence on this. But I'm certainly not against it if the citizens vote for it, and I'm certainly not against it if I'm on city council to represent the citizens of this community and their choices.
The issue of shared services isn't new to the Downriver area or Allen Park in specific. Do you support a movement towards shared services for police and fire at this time?
Well, we already have shared services, which is in the effect of mutual aid. If I'm being asked the question, do I support not having an Allen Park Police or Fire Department and consolidating with a greater Downriver area, my answer to that question would be no. The reason I say that is because we have elderly population in our community that we need these response times. We need a fully staffed police and fire department. Currently, right now, I know our police department's not at the FBI recommended levels, and there can probably be some additions on the fire force too. So I would definitely look into making sure that both departments are at the FBI and NFPA recommended levels for police and fire respectively.
Allen Park has been plagued with basement flooding for decades. As a city council member, what will you do to alleviate this ongoing problem?
Well, first and foremost, we also have a infrastructure that was put into place in the 1920s. So what I would do is I would, get a task force together to go through and start pinpointing these areas where the issues are occurring and go through the sewers and scope them out and figure out what the problem is with the backup. As one of the other candidates mentioned, we are part of a conglomerate of the downriver area with the sewage in that too. So talking to those communities too to figure out if that's what's causing this problem too, and resolving those issues first would definitely be a start, in addition to looking at our own infrastructure as well.
What do you feel is the most pressing issue facing Allen Park in 2020?
Well, I'll certainly say that the flooding is definitely on my radar as one of the most pressing issues. Another pressing issue too is that the house values have climbed up and our millage rates are up there. So if there's going to be any increase in millage renewals, I'm certainly not against those. However, they need to be based on what millages were going forward based on the current property values. Back in 2011, they increased the millage on the police and fire, and for good reason, because the revenues to the city had went down at the time, and they had to get those revenues back in to support the police and fire. However, if there's going to be a renewal, it needs to be based on what the current house values are now.
Discuss a key difference that exists between you and your opponents that you would like voters to consider on Election Day.
The key differences between me and the other opponents is that I specialize in managing multi-million-dollar budgets, making sure they're balanced in buildings and infrastructure. And that's the nut and bolts of what our city is built upon. So I think that I would bring that to the council as a positive to work with my other colleagues who are going to be elected with me in that regard. Again, I'm also in favor of keeping taxes as low as possible so the city can operate, so it also fosters growth for business and residents as well.
Thank you. Now we will have Pam Syke.
I would like to thank the students and staff of the Allen Park High School for hosting this event, and I would like to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy lives to come and get to know us. First question, please.
Discuss a key difference that exists between you and your opponents that you would like voters to consider on Election Day.
The key difference is experience. My husband and I have made Allen Park our home for 14 years. our daughter graduated from this very high school. As for myself, I went to Lawrence Tech and earned a bachelor's degree of science with a specialty in construction and engineering. I have worked for the state, a county, a city, and a township. All total, I have over 30 years of governmental experience. I have designed a runway, ran a survey crew, issued building permits, reviewed contracts, and built roads, just to name a few of the things I have done. I ask that you allow me to put my 30 years of experience to work for you. Next question, please.
Allen Park has been plagued with basement flooding for decades. As a city council member, what will you do to alleviate this ongoing problem?
As things are now, we know heavy rains will come again, our basements will flood, and we will face the devastation again. In attending the city council meetings just after the last flood, I heard the residents' need for better communication before, during, and after a storm event. This goal of better communication requires a written emergency plan be in place before and not after the next flood. It is, however, important to remember that flooding is not just an Allen Park problem, but a watershed problem. Allen Park needs to actively participate in various watersheds, because finding an answer to this complex issue is not ours alone to solve, and every community in the watershed must do its part for any plan to work. Remember those 30 years of experience I mentioned? I spent 6 years of those reviewing plans for compliance to the Wayne County Stormwater Ordinance. Newly constructed stormwater systems function as they should. However, as with any infrastructure, maintenance is the key. A pond full of sediment cannot hold back the water that it is designed to do, and it will not help during a flooding event.
In November, residents of Allen Park will be asked to consider a ballot proposal regarding marijuana establishments within the city limits. What is your position on the proposal?
I have found people on both sides of this issue are very passionate. But let us remember on November 5th, we are not tasked with deciding to allow the use of medical marijuana, nor are we tasked with deciding to allow its recreational use. We are being tasked with approving the language of the legislation that will determine how the selling of marijuana will be allowed within our city. Let us not be fooled. This proposal was written by an attorney. However, it was not our city attorney. It was written by an attorney who has a mutually beneficial association with the leaders of the marijuana industry. So I urge you to read this language carefully before casting your ballot. To me, most of this language stinks. Yes, the pun was intended. When I read this proposal, I saw many instances where this language could put the city and the business owners at odds. Such wording as unreasonably impractical and a court of competent jurisdiction. I don't know about you, but I don't want to end up in court battling a billion-dollar industry with a law that they themselves had a heavy hand in writing. Please note, if we vote yes, it is not just 3 micro businesses and 3 retailers that will have approved we will have approved all of those listed in Article 1 and Section 3. This is because before we even vote, those businesses have gained state approval. We will also have, by this language, approved whatever other businesses the industries get approved at the state level. Is this what you truly want? So I hope that your vote is no, and that you wait for the duly elected new council to decide the language of our laws that govern our city, and not use solely the language provided by big business. I must say that I do believe in the power of the vote, and I will support whatever the citizens decide.
The issue of shared services isn't new to the Downriver area or Allen Park in specific. Do you support a movement towards shared services for police and fire at this time?
For 2020, we have an approved budget, and that does not include any more sharing of services. Therefore, my answer is, I do not support a movement towards shared services as what we're thinking at this time.
What do you feel is the most pressing issue facing Allen Park in 2020?
If you have been following city council meetings, you know we have several pressing issues. The new council needs to get down to business of governing right after the swearing in. So I am going to say the most immediate and pressing need is to make the transition from the last city council to the next as seamless as possible. I have lived through several changings of the guard, and I know that the transition can be short and sweet or long and difficult. I have faith in our employees to help us through the process. The elected must take their seats with open minds and open hearts. Dedicated hearts. For you, the voters start the 2020 transition process on Tuesday, November 5th. My hope is that after listening to us tonight, that you will feel confident as you cast your ballot. Please consider voting for Pam's site. It would be my honor to serve you all. Thank you.
Now we will have Charles Blevins.
Good evening. My name is Charles Blevins. I've been a lifelong resident through the city of Allen Park all my life. I just want to say thank you to the student body that is putting up this form. I started going to council meetings when my brother started going to council meetings 13 years ago, and he brought me in to get involved. And so it's very important that the younger residents and older residents stay involved with city politics. I've been, the last 4 years after running for office the first time, this being my second, I got involved more within the city and volunteered my time and staying informed with the city events. First question, please.
The issue of shared services isn't new to the Downriver area or Allen Park in specific. Do you support a movement towards shared services for police and fire at this time?
I absolutely do not. As a full-time security officer, I understand when it comes to an emergency, every second matters. And when you make that call, I don't believe that sharing the departments would be a big effect, best effect for the city. Next.
Allen Park has been plagued with basement flooding for decades. As a city council member, what will you do to alleviate this ongoing problem?
Well, first off, as most of the other candidates say, it's pretty much communication. One thing I would love to see for the next council to have is more town hall meetings where we just figure out what is the best way to help fix this. And it's not just an Allen Park situation, it's a downriver situation. We need to come together, like I said, town hall meetings, so that you guys can be informed as taxpayers.
In November, residents of Allen Park will be asked to consider a ballot proposal regarding marijuana establishments within the city limits. What is your position on the proposal?
I personally do not support this proposal, but I will support whatever the residents of the city, whether it passes or not. I will 100% support the outcome November 5th.
What do you feel is the most pressing issue facing Allen Park in 2020?
The one big thing I've been campaigning on is communication. One thing I would love to bring back that we used to have at the old City Hall is a marquee sign. When you're down on Southfield Road during rush hour, stuff like this, events, you can see that what's coming up. As well as town hall meetings, knowing when to vote, where to vote on November 5th. Also, one other thing is bringing employment up throughout the whole departments of the city.
Discuss a key difference that exists between you and your opponents that you would like voters to consider on election day.
I've been going to city council meetings for 13 years. Some people say that they want to be the voice for the residents. I have gone to council meetings speaking to the council with your questions, because your questions are my questions, and I believe that communication is the best key for the city, and I have been doing my best for the last 13 years to speak up to the council with issues, problems. One big thing is the Allen Road and Wick, the crumbly roads. Last year I've been going through and talking about that, and finally it's gotten done. Talking to the Wayne County about the light fixtures on Allen and Champaign. So whenever someone has a question, I will do my best to answer your questions as quickly as I can, and that's what makes me different.
Thank you. Now we will have Matthew E. Valerius.
Good evening. First, as a teacher, I'm in awe. Just in awe of the students, the teachers, and the organization putting this on. It's just warms the heart, truly, as an educator, that this event is taking place, and I'm proud to be a part of it. My name's Matthew Valerius. It's an honor to be here. My wife Holly and our son Nathan have been residents of Allen Park for 19 years. I worked as an English and speech teacher at Cabrini High School for 12 years, and I'm currently working as a special education teacher at the Taylor School District. I love education, I love teaching, so I believe it's critical to be educated and to stay educated. It afforded me the opportunity to continue my education, receiving a master's degree in special education from the University of Michigan Dearborn, as well as a master's degree in educational leadership from Medina University. Before I started teaching, worked in a little different job field, electrical engineering field, and also on the assembly line at Ford Motor Company. Proudly served in the United States Army, Michigan Army National Guard, and I'm running for city council because I want to give back to the city I call home and serve as a voice for the citizens of Allen Park.
In November, residents of Allen Park will be asked to consider a ballot proposal regarding marijuana establishments within the city limits. What is your position on the proposal?
At this time, I'm against this proposal. Once again, I think it's too early. I think there's too many unknowns. I just believe that jumping in it before fully understanding what the benefits and the downsides are to the city, I just don't feel as though enough research has been done to warrant having recreational dispensaries in our city. Once again, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected to city council, and in November, the residents of Allen Park decide that and they pass this proposal, it'll be my responsibility, like I said, if I am fortunate enough to be elected, to work with the city council members and the mayor to do what we can to make sure all the guidelines, all the rules are followed with the dispensaries and where they're located and how they're run.
The issue of shared services isn't new to the Downriver area or Allen Park in specific. Do you support a movement towards shared services for police and fire at this time?
As it relates to police and fire, no, I do not support shared services. I believe Allen Park Police and Fire Departments are the best down there. I believe that their services should be centered within the city that they serve.
Allen Park has been plagued with basement flooding for decades. As a city council member, what will you do to alleviate this ongoing problem?
I really wish there was an easy answer to this question. As a lot of the candidates have spoken prior, it's a difficult issue. I live in an area of Allen Park where I had no flooding in May. Right across the street from me, they had 3 feet of water in their basements. You know, it's an issue that's plagued not only Allen Park, but other downriver communities. You know, I think communication between city government and the residents is important. Needs to be improved, definitely. Whether it's an advance notice in regards to the possibility of flooding, where time is of the essence for homeowners to do what they can to try to save belongings in the event that their basements flood. There has to be communication. I believe also pump stations, they must be maintained, must be made operational, and be ready to be activated in very short notice. And then just the research, communication between the other downriver communities that go through this during periods of high rain and everything else, to talk about what could be done, what's the possibility of infrastructure, whether it's the possibility of finding property for a retention basin or a flood basin, something. Anything that will alleviate the issues and the heartbreak of losing valued possessions and a tremendous amount of money in regards to your homes needs to be addressed.
What do you feel is the most pressing issue facing Allen Park in 2020?
I don't look at it just in 2020. I look at it beyond. In February of this past year, the current city council approved refinancing of some city bonds connected to like the 2003-2010 voter-approved millages, as well as the 2007 brownfield bond used for the Fairlane Green retail complex, and also the 2009 bonds for the failed Unity Studios venture. That action was definitely a positive step. If we are elected to city council, it's our duty to follow up on that. You think about, like close to $2 million per year is spent on taxes on these bonds, and the city gets nothing in return. It's critical to work diligently to paying on these bonds. And that's not just the responsibility of the elected council these next 4 years, it's going to be the future. But it starts with the new council that's coming in.
Discuss a key difference that exists between you and your opponents that you would like voters to consider on election day.
I don't really like to focus on the differences. I believe that all of us here, we wouldn't be up here if we didn't care for the city of Allen Park and believe that we could, help and serve the citizens of Allen Park. So I don't like to focus on the differences. I take great pride in being up here with all these individuals behind me. We all want to serve, improve, and promote the city of Allen Park. I simply want to use my skills, my ability to listen and to communicate effectively, and use those to serve as a voice for the citizens of Allen Park, the city that I'm proud to call home.
Thank you. Now we have Daniel Lloyd. Allen Park will be asked to consider a ballot proposal regarding marijuana establishments within the city limits. Discuss a key difference that exists between you and your opponents that you would like voters to consider on election day.
All right, so thank you, Izzy. My name is Dan Lloyd. I'm a history and English teacher here at Allen Park High School. I'm actually a third-generation Allen Park teacher. My grandma started teaching in 1964, and she taught to 2001. My dad taught from 1993, and he taught to 2017. So all told, there's been Lloyd teaching at Allen Park since the Johnson administration. I believe that this background truly makes me remarkable amongst this highly qualified field of candidates, not just because I have history, I have in the city, but growing up in a family of Allen Park teachers who chose to make their home here in Allen Park, I was instilled with the importance of investing in time and talents in the community that you call home. Furthermore, in 1997, my father proposed a course titled Impact on Government, the same class that put on this program for us today. At the center of this course is the idea that an individual citizen has the greatest ability to impact government at the local level, and those decisions made on that level have the greatest impact on the citizen's life. Watching my father from the time I was a child until adulthood, I've developed a sacred respect for democracy, a belief that all stakeholders have a seat at the table, and it is the duty of elected officials to speak for every individual they represent, which includes the individuals that we hope will inherit the city from us. And as a teacher in this community, I have a daily interaction with that group of citizens. And it is in my role as an educator that every day I work with the future leaders of this community. I strive to train them in the skills necessary to live in a civil society, the ability to understand the world from a different person's perspective, the ability to develop opinions based on facts, and how to make a clear, evidence-based argument. If elected to council, I would make sure to use these skills to best serve the interests of the citizens of Allen Park, young and old, so that people will continue to look at this community as a place to make a life. I want to help build a diverse and inclusive society where individuals who look differently, pray differently, and love differently strive together to the same goal, a better Allen Park. Ultimately, I believe myself to be smart, capable, and attuned with the needs of my fellow citizens. But what makes me truly qualified to hold the office of Allen Park City Council member is my dedication to the principles of democracy developed all those years ago watching my father. Therefore, if I am fortunate enough to be selected by the people of Allen Park to represent them, I will uphold the duty entrusted to me and serve the members of this community.
What do you feel is the most pressing issue facing Allen Park in 2020?
I think I was asked this by a out-of-town friend as to what it is that makes people come back and live in the city. Why do so many people come back? And the best answer that I can give to that person is the interconnectivity that we have in the city. I grew up playing baseball on the Diamonds for APAC and playing football on Cunningham Park, playing Bulldogs. And it was during that time that I made lifelong friendships, friends that I still have today, that I still talk to, that still live in the city. I fear that interconnectivity that makes this such a great city is endangered. And one of the things that makes that endangered is too often the places where we meet our fellow citizens is behind a computer screen. It's not in the parks, it's not in our local businesses, and I think that we need to strive as a council to make this city come out and meet each other into the public. I think that it comes down to encouraging green space so that our children have places where they can go pick up baseball and pick up football and meet each other. I think that means that we need to continue to modernize our library so our citizens can go and learn and grow and improve. And I think that means to continue to enhance the programming that we have at the community center so that people of all age can meet their friends, their family, and they can continue to improve. Okay? I ultimately believe that if we implement all these things, if we make this a more interconnected city and continue to make Allen Park a great community to live and grow.
The issue of shared services isn't new to the Downriver area or Allen Park in specific. Do you support a movement towards shared services for police and fire at this time?
I do not. As we mentioned, we do have shared services, but the idea of getting rid of our police and fire is a scary one. As a wrestling coach here at the high school, I've had to call for emergency services. And I cannot tell you, in those heart-pounding moments where you are with a child that is in danger, the reassurance that you feel when you see a friend or a family member that responds to that call. We have, as we have been mentioned, amazing police and firefighters, and I think that we need to do whatever we can to maintain that. However, because of revenue sharing with the state, that is across the state of Michigan, local police and fire is under threat. Currently in the city of Allen Park, 51% of our funding for police and fire comes from that 2013 millage, 51%. Losing that funding would be devastating to the institutions that we entrust to protect us. So I believe that steps need to be taken to secure the same level of funding that is considered in our city budget so that those who are willing to risk their lives for our safety don't also have to worry about their livelihood.
In November, residents of Allen Park will be asked to consider a ballot proposal regarding marijuana establishments within the city limits. What is your position on the proposal?
Ultimately, I think what this question comes down to is not whether or not marijuana is good or bad. The voters of Michigan have decided that overwhelmingly, and that's actually, in a day-to-day, that is becoming less of an issue. What the question that we have to consider is whether or not marijuana is good or bad for Allen Park. And I think that is something that is still incredibly debatable. As all these fine, qualified candidates have brought up this evening, we still have so many unknowns. We do not know how much revenue is going to come in. We do not know how much it is going to cost to police an all-cash business. These are a lot of questions that I believe that there's capable people up here that when selected to council, we will be able to address.
Allen Park has been plagued with basement flooding for decades. As a city council member, what will you do to alleviate this ongoing problem?
I think the most important thing we need to do is communicate before, what is the issue, when do we have flooding, what people can do to protect their property. During, we need to get out to the most vulnerable members of our community to be able to communicate to them and talk to them and give them the things they need. And then afterwards, we need to be able to speak to our citizens to get them the help that they need to restore their lives. Thank you so much.
Now we will have Gary Schlapp.
I want to start tonight by asking, who are we? We aren't Southern Allen Park. We aren't Northern Allen Park. We are Allen Park. We need to stop acting like two separate cities separated by Southfield. We are Allen Park. I'm running for city council because I care for the future of Allen Park, and I know you do too. We have a lot of candidates that like to talk about the past, their resume, or how long they lived in Allen Park. I'm a proud Allen Parker, and I just wanted to see one candidate who would talk about the future and their goals for the city of Allen Park. Let's talk about growth, unleashing Allen Park's potential, a city that can provide a strong future for my family and yours, a city that values public safety and works together with the community, a city where we can focus on where we want to be in 10 years, not worry about the past. We need to aim high, not be afraid to miss, because it'll be even greater failure if we aim low and hit. My name is Gary Schlapp. I'm a candidate for Allen Park City Council, but I'm also a married man to my beautiful wife, Bridget, which it's her birthday today, so I must have a great wife for her to be here tonight. But I also have an amazing son that's 1 year old, and I'm an Army veteran, where I served in the Global War on Terror. I'm also a former school teacher, and currently a business manager in the transportation industry. But I want to take the time now to thank the teachers, the administrators, and most importantly, the students at Allen Park High School. Thank you. And I also want to thank my fellow Allen Parkers, our Allen Parkers, for being here tonight. You know, the future of Allen Park's bright. We better wear shades.
Discuss a key difference that exists between you and your opponents that you would like voters to consider on election day.
There are three key differences that I like to distinguish myself between me and my fellow opponents. Number one, it's true, I'm not a lifelong Allen Parker. In fact, I chose to live here. I chose to raise a family here. But that, in fact, is my strength, because I can bring a unique perspective that otherwise would be lost. Number two, longevity doesn't equal loyalty. If it does, it would be a great shame and disservice to our city manager who lives in Melvindale, and our other firefighters and police officers that also live in the city of Allen Park. And number three, my team and I have knocked on over 5,000 doors, listening and hearing concerns of our fellow Allen Parkers. But I promise to hold that, more than just that. If I'm elected as your next city councilman, I'll hold coffee hours monthly and quarterly issue forums where we can get experts and talk about issues before it gets up to the night of an election. And I would also bring the connections I have earned this election cycle with my endorsements from ASPU and the UAW.
What do you feel is the most pressing issue facing Allen Park in 2020?
Well, the most pressing issue facing Allen Park doesn't start in 2020. It starts the day after election. We really need to work to revitalize our city and our downtown. We need to work together as a team with the DDA, with other city departments, with small businesses, and most importantly, the community. We need to listen, not dictate. We need to lead, not follow. Downtown is the central core and commercial area of our city. Lack of a vibrant downtown signals that we don't care, that we don't want to grow. And that includes finding a replacement or possible use for our beloved theater. You know, we must work to bring our city alive, pumped with business, diversity, and people who gleam bright during the day and shine even brighter at night. We must do that by improving our infrastructure, such as adding bike lanes, fixing our sidewalks, adding green space, and continuing fixing our roads.
Allen Park has been plagued with basement flooding for decades. As a city council Councilmember, what will you do to alleviate this ongoing problem?
You know, this flood captured headlines. It was a sight that, for sore eyes, we've seen trash heaps everywhere. You know, precious memories and our keepsakes were just swept away and stuffed in bags of trash. Yet, flooding isn't a new problem, and you shouldn't need an ark to live in Allen Park. It's a problem that has to be addressed. We just can't keep kicking that can down the road, expecting the same time to happen. City councils and mayors, they come and go, but at the end of the day, neighborhoods remain. It won't be easy, it definitely won't be cheap, but it's something we must do. We must work, and I will work together to build and institute a flood response team, work with our planners, our engineers, and review our pump stations, making sure they're operational, and inspect it regularly. And also work with the state and county government to make sure the response to the public, the citizens, our fellow Allen Parkers, are informed in a more timely manner.
The issue of shared services isn't new to the Downriver area or Allen Park in specific. Do you support a movement towards shared services for police and fire at this time?
You know, public safety is the most basic rule of government. If we're talking about shared services in the form of mutual aid, then I definitely agree with shared services. And I understand that both as a community advocate and someone who wore a uniform in the United States Army, where it was my duty to make sure that our country was safe. Police officers and firefighters have the most dangerous jobs imaginable. I will make sure public safety is a priority today, tomorrow, and always. But to do so ensures that our police and fire department have up-to-date resources and adequate staffing to make sure they're safe on the job and also make sure we're safe at home. But doing so means using shared services. It creates that collaboration between our city and other downriver communities. Not every city needs a SWAT team. Not every city needs a 100-foot aerial ladder truck. Shared services save our city money. You know, there are limits to what we can spend, and we have to grow responsibly.
In November, residents of Allen Park will be asked to consider a ballot proposal regarding marijuana establishments within the city limits. What is your position on the proposal?
Well, after talking to over 5 residents or more, knocking on their door and listening to what my team heard, I think I've come to a consensus that at this time we need more information, and I won't be voting for the proposal. However, if the proposal passes, it will be my duty on City Council to make sure when implemented that we do it in the most safe way possible. The will of the people is keystone to our democracy, and we can never overlook that. Thank you.
Thank you all for your responses. Now you will each get 1 minute for a closing remark. Starting back again will be David Michael Miller.
Hello again. Wow, we all got a hard choice coming up. I know, like, part of the reason why, obviously I'm here for a reason, but one of the things I wanted to get out tonight was to help me decide, because like you, I'm a citizen, I'm going to be voting in this election too. And, you know, I'm in a unique position where I got a bunch of other people up here that are going for the same thing, and it's going to be a hard decision, I'll tell you that much. So, that being said, it's going to be a good time, and I think Allen Park is on the up and up. And I would like to hope you give me the chance to continue that growth. Thank you.
Next we have Chad Morrow.
Hello again, everybody. Real quick, I just want to reference this whole marijuana proposal one last time, and not the actual proposal itself, but what it stands for. 57% of the people voted in favor of marijuana last year, and the council the following week unanimously opted out. Rather than campaigning door to door and trying to get people to like me, I gave you an example of what I can do, and what that is be representative of the majority. So with my being elected, I can guarantee I will be a voice of the majority, and not just a voice, but one that will keep us ahead of the curve rather than behind it. I hear a lot of this wait and see. And that's not how we became the pearl of downriver. That's waiting and following rather than deciding and leading.
Thank you. Now we will have Robert L. Stites.
Almost halftime. You have been a very attentive audience. Thank you very much. I hope that you have all learned the values and differences between those of us on the stage. I've lived in Allen Park since my childhood. I married and raised my family in Allen Park. My adult children have chosen to stay in Allen Park and raise their children here. Please know I will continue to be a dedicated public servant. Thank you to the Allen Park High School staff and the students for hosting this event and for all of you attending. I appreciate your vote on November 5th. Please pick up my brochure and refrigerator magnet on the way out. Take care of yourself. Have a safe home.
Now we will have Tony Lally.
Good evening again. I appreciate you coming to this evening. I appreciate everybody's opinions. I think we're all up here for the same reason, to get elected in office. In this election, the other candidates do not have council experience like myself. Yes, in my previous experience on council, I learned some of the hard lessons, but I have the experience and the ability to see what is needed to be done for our city to move forward and make this community even better in the coming years. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank my friends, my supporters. I want to thank my wife Maria and my family for all their support now and over the years. At this time, I want to extend my deepest sympathy to the Lloyd family for their loss. Thank you to the senior government class students, Allen Park High School, for continuing the tradition that Mr. Bob Lloyd started by doing such a great job putting this event on tonight. Thank you for inviting me to this occasion. Have a good evening. Thank you. God bless you. Please vote for me on November the 5th. I have some more short things.
Next up is Dennis Marcos.
I guess these guys all here, you know, you got a lot of new faces, fresh faces, people who decided they want to get involved in this city. There is not a bad choice here. These guys are all great, girls, ladies, I'm sorry. Anybody you pick is going to be a good choice here. The biggest thing that I'm going to ask everybody here is get out and vote. We can't have 12% turnout. You want your voices heard, get off of Facebook. Get into the city hall meetings. If it's too early for you, maybe we can change the time to 6:30 or 7 so more people can attend, you know, because I know 6 o'clock, so it's kind of tough to keep bringing out. But whatever, get out and vote, get involved in the community, okay? Thank you.
Next we have Steve Gary.
Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to come out here and listen to all of us tonight. And if elected, I look forward to representing all of you and working together to try to make Allen Park a better community. Hopefully we can reevaluate what these millage rates are being taxed on as the values increase. And lower taxes will foster growth of business and residents as well. As far as this event, we want to be sure to remember Mr. Lloyd, who was a good man. He set this up for everybody. So on election day, I look forward to having the opportunity to represent all of you if elected. Thank you and have a great night.
Next we have Pam Syke.
will close tonight by reading the words of a person who grew up downriver and is a former Allen Parker. Karen Stafford wrote, "I have had the honor of knowing Pam for over 20 years. I never doubted that I could depend on her to come through for me. She's a woman of her word and puts forth the effort and commitment to do what she says she will do. Pam is a thinker and a planner with great insight and ability to research and make sound decisions. Pam has the knowledge, strength, and courage to make the hard decisions that is required of those in leadership. She fights for what is right, not for what is easy. The citizens of Allen Park would be very fortunate to have Pam Sipe on their team." Thank you.
Next, we have Charles Blevins.
As I look around, the last time I was on the stage, I was in the show The Wizard of Oz. There's nothing speaks more true than there's no place like home. And I would be so honored to represent my hometown, Allen Park, and I want to thank the students for putting this all together again. And please go out November 5th, and I hope you consider me as your next representative. God bless, stay positive. Thank you.
Now we will have Matthew E. Valerius.
Once again, I want to thank the students and teachers for putting together this event. It's proof positive that the future is indeed in good hands. I also want to thank my wife Holly for all her support despite her repeated eye rolls and comments such as, "Do you know what you are getting yourself into?" Lastly, I want to thank my dad, who's here tonight. You are my hero, and I thank you for instilling in me the values I try so hard to practice each and every day. I thank everyone here tonight, and whether you cast or vote for me or not on November 5th, please exercise your right to invoke change and go vote. Thank you.
Now we have Daniel Lloyd.
Hope you allow me a personal remark here. My father, Bob Lloyd, helped put on this event, and he always instilled in me this idea that democracy is not a spectator sport. Somebody remarked to me after he passed that he never got angry, and if anyone knows my dad, you know that that's not true. He got angry a lot about a lot of things. Okay, but what made him different is he just didn't get angry and sit there and do nothing about it. He got angry, and he got up, and he spoke to his council. He got angry, and he spoke to the people that can make a difference. He stood up for what was right. He stood up for the things. And if we have the people, the young people that are in this room, okay, if they continue to do that, and we have 12 great people that are up on this stage that are willing to make better things happen for Allen Park, okay, then I say to you that Bob Lloyd is alive and well in the city of Allen Park.
Lastly, we have Gary Schleck.
Speaking last, I hope I appease that, saving the last for best, or whatever that saying is. But from talking and listening to my fellow Allen Parkers, the election isn't about who has the longest resume or who has lived here the longest. The election's about who's going to lead Allen Park into the future. Now, I will fight to make sure we revitalize our downtown and our city, make sure our infrastructure issues are answered and our flooding issues are addressed. We have to be proactive. We have to do that by making sure public safety remains a #1 priority. And I will listen to you, even when the heat in the kitchen is too hot. Being on city council isn't easy, but it's easier than just watching our future slip by. It's time to have a city council who isn't afraid to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty. My name is Gary Schlack, and as your neighbor, fellow Allen Parker, I humbly ask for the opportunity to serve you by asking for your vote and become the next city councilman of Allen Park. Thank you.
Please give a round of applause for our city council candidates. commission, we will have the mayor candidates, treasurer, and clerk on stage for their responses. See you back in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ella Bailey, and welcome back to part 2 of the Candidate Forum. I will now introduce the candidates in this part. Please stand when your name is called. Running for clerk, Michael Mizzi. Running for treasurer, Maureen Armstrong. Running for mayor, Kevin Rourke. And running for mayor, Gail McLeod. Due to the fact that the candidates for the offices of city clerk and city treasurer are running unopposed, they will be given an opportunity to address the citizens with comments regarding their obligations and duties to the city of Allen Park. Comments will be limited to 4 minutes each. Both mayoral candidates will answer the 5 questions previously asked to the city council candidates and will have 7 minutes to do so, with an additional minute for closing remarks. Without further ado, City Clerk Michael Mizzi.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Mizzi. I've been the city clerk now for 12 years. Fortunately, I don't have an opponent, so that's the best way to run. And I seriously want to thank the citizens of Allen Park for trusting me with this position for so long. I'm going to start with a brief introduction, and then I'm going to go into a little bit about election security and assure people everything you've heard in the news over the last few years, how Michigan really is a pioneer state in security. So, okay, my name is Michael Mizzi. I grew up in the southern end of Allen Park, and I attended Cabrini Grade School and High School. Skipping along, I'm married now to Jennifer McDonald Mizzi. I have 3 children. I have Matthew, who's 13 at the middle school, Jacob, who is 8 at Benny Elementary School, and we had a surprise blessing 6 months ago with Maya, so I've got a 6-month-old, yes. So I'm hoping to serve you a long time now. But I also wanted to touch base a little bit about absentee voting. There is no reason for absentee voting anymore, so if there's any reason you think you might be late for work or you have something going on, please call our office ahead of time. It's as easy as filling out a form similar to what you see at the polls. You bring it back, mail it back, and then we issue you the ballot. So I'm going to start on voter registration. Okay, one of the laws, the election laws have recently changed after 2018, and I'm not going to get into all of them, but what I think is one of the best ones is when you go to Secretary of State for your identification and your driver's license, you are automatically registered to vote. It used to be you had to ask them or say, I'd like to register, but now, no matter what, you have to deny the right to vote. I don't want it. You have to physically say that in order not to be elected. So we've made some beautiful headway there. Voter registration. You've heard a lot of things in the previous elections, the federal and state, about the voter registration systems getting hacked. Well, first of all, what I have to tell you is if that were to ever happen, the only information someone would get from you is your birthday. Okay? If you walked into the clerk's office tomorrow and wanted a list of all the registered voters, you have a right to have the name, the address, and that type of information. Now, the way you register to vote, a lot of it is done by digital signatures now at the Secretary of State. However, no matter what, there is a physical card that is printed off and mailed to our office. So I want to assure everybody, if for any reason they did wipe out something or anything, we have everyone who's registered to vote, a card there. So we could easily go there in alphabetical order and figure it out. The 30 seconds, okay? Not as quick as I thought I had. Let me say, and with voting on Election Day, one thing I want you to know about Michigan is we have paper ballots. So let's say for some ungodly reason that the tabulator malfunctions or is hacked in any way, shape, or form, Michigan always has those physical ballots you vote with. So I guess I only have 10 seconds left. I would like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. God bless you and good night.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. Next, we have City Treasurer Maureen Armstrong.
Thank you. I have served as the Allen Park City Treasurer for the past 8 years. I grew up in Allen Park, went to Cabrini. My husband Jim and I raised our 3 children here in the city, and 2 of my children still live in the city. Some of the changes that were made in the Treasurer's office were this past year. I talked to Comerica Bank, who is the city's bank, and I set up an ACH payment available to pay your taxes. That is an automatic withdrawal payment system where you can have your tax payments drawn right out of your account on the due date. This helps for people who are out of town on tax day, and it seems to be convenient for some of our residents. This has started last December, and we have about 100 people who have enrolled in that. I also partnered with Oakland County to provide the service of credit card payments for any type of fees or costs within the city. Things like property taxes, licenses, permits, services that the police and fire departments provide. The general public can make payments through our website with a credit card or a e-check. And you can also come into City Hall and make payments over the counter. The city then is given a portion of the money that we collect through service fees from our customers. And last year, Oakland County provided us with checks amounting $14,000. And although that's a small amount of revenue, every year that we have been involved with Oakland County, it increases. And so we're hopeful that people take advantage of this, and the city gets a little bit of revenue along with that. Over the last years in office, I attended classes and seminars sponsored by the Michigan Municipal Treasurers Association. I am the first treasurer in the city of Allen Park to have the certification of the Michigan Certified Professional Treasurers. I go to their seminars, their classes. I get a lot of good information on updated legislation and tax law changes, and I feel that it's very important to keep up on education and the changes that affect our taxes. I also belong to the Wayne County Treasurers Association, and both these associations give me a lot of information, and I'm hopeful that it helps me do my job a little better. I always encourage our residents and customers to come into the city and talk to me if you feel that there's something that I can provide for you in the way of services in the Treasurer's office. I'm very thankful for the support that I've gotten from people the last 8 years, and I'm hopeful that I'll be able to do a good job in the next 4. And I'd like to thank the high school here, the teachers, the students for providing this forum for us, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Armstrong. Now we have questions for our mayoral candidates. First up, Kevin Hort. Okay, our first question is.
I'm going to do my intro. Yes. We're good. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for staying after halftime. And I want to thank the government class for the opportunity to be here. I believe this is probably my 3rd time being here, and it's always a privilege. was interesting with honoring Bob Lloyd today. I grew up on Oceana, 15247 Oceana, and right behind me was Bob and Mark Lloyd growing up, so hi, Grandma. So it's kind of neat because my wife and I, Karen, sitting over here, we've been in the city for 62 years. I know some people can't believe it, but it's those 62 years I grew up here, went to school here. I can remember, like I said, living on Oceana and walking to Arno School for Mrs. Thomas for kindergarten. My wife did the same, going to Riley. And then it was really interesting when Dennis Mark was talking about the history of Schaefer's Farm. When my parents decided to move, they looked at Birmingham, they looked at Bloomfield, they looked out west into the Plymouth areas, and they found a lot on Schaefer's Farm on Belfort, and we built a house there in '63. And the coolest thing was, for all the young kids, you'll have to Google it, where McDonald's is and Martinson Security Bank, that was the farm. And from our house all the way to Allen Road was pheasants and wildlife and everything there. It was just great growing up here in Allen Park. Our three children attended school in Allen Park, and they participated in all the activities. And my daughter Megan, sitting over here with my wife Karen, is the athletic trainer here at Allen Park High School. So she kind of stayed with the system. It's a great opportunity because it gives me an opportunity to stay involved with the students here at Allen Park High School, as well as Cabrini and Inner City. Some of those that have athletes playing, you'll see me on the sidelines taking pictures at the football games or the hockey or volleyball, whatever the case is. But it's an honor to be part of that. Part of it with, it's interesting too, we talk about community, with Allen Park being a community. A couple weeks ago I was at Inner City Christian for their fall festival. And met Pastor Dave, we were talking and going golfing together, we found common interest with it. But it's just those types of things that Cabrini is all about. The Knights of Columbus that Tony Lally was talking about, that he's heavily involved in. I've been involved since college with them as well. And with Cabrini and our friends of Cabrini, we raised over $500,000. Those that have seen the new athletic complex there with the lights on Friday nights, it's such a great thing for those kids to play baseball, softball, soccer, and football under the lights with that. And I was part of that. And what I've learned from our mayor that's here tonight, and from all these activities and the things that we do at Allen Park, being mayor is not just about being at City Hall. It's about being in this community, supporting this community, going to these restaurants and doing that. From the senior citizens, my mom's a senior citizen, still here in Allen Park, 88 years old, and not with us tonight, but I'm aware of the increasing needs of the seniors in Allen Park. We talked about police and fire earlier. They were there when my dad had his episode. We took him to the hospital. It'll be 6 years coming up next week that he passed away. But they were there when we needed that. And I keep in mind the services, the housing values that are important to all of us, and keeping that reputation in Allen Park. And speaking of my dad, he was part of, there you are. Oh, okay. Please keep that down. Okay. Speaking of my dad, he was on the city council in Allen Park as well for many years. He was also in the school board in Allen Park for many years. And also started the beautification commission in Allen Park with a number of residents that wanted to keep Allen Park beautiful. And it's because of his involvement, my parents' involvement downriver, that got me involved in giving back to this community. So I mentioned I'm 62 years old. The last 40 years when I graduated from Michigan State, got involved in coaching. Mrs. Burke back there, I had her son playing hockey. And I got involved coaching in hockey. I got involved in a hockey association. And the more I got involved, I found out what was going on at the rink and got involved in our Parks and Rec Commission. I spent 8 years on Parks and Rec Commission. I was there when we built the community center, added on to that. And it's been such a great addition. We have the best ice there, including Little Caesar Arena. Our guys do a great job in southeastern Michigan. Maintaining our parks, we continue to do that. We're fortunate with Mark Kibbe and Tina Gavarecki getting block grant money for us to upgrade a number of our parks in Allen Park, and we continue to do that. So it's not about me being on council or me being the mayor, it's about this community and those people who work together. And all the 12 that were here before, I give them credit for stepping up and getting involved in it. I kind of joke all the time and saying it's 4 minutes of getting sworn in and 4 years of getting sworn at. But you do that because you care. As I mentioned, I also had on the DDA, Downtown Development Authority, for a year. I've learned a lot from that as well. I have my bachelor's from Michigan State, I said that. I have my master's from Wayne State University in Labor and Industrial Relations, so I understand the end from negotiations in that part as well. I'm part of the accomplishments we've done the last 4 years. I was on council, I mentioned the parks, the new city hall that the mayor led us in with that, and the new roads that you trusted us with that millage. But the one thing is, I'm running for mayor for the same reason you are here. I care about Allen Park, and it's our hometown.
First question. In November, residents of Allen Park will be asked to consider a ballot proposal regarding marijuana establishments within the city limits. What is your position on this proposal?
Thank you. As I've been walking around talking to a lot of citizens, I thought this was one of the crucial questions I wanted to answer today. And if I don't get to some of the other questions, I can talk to you in after. What's really important is you heard a lot of a variety of answers here tonight. To get some of the answers, I went to the open house they had last Sunday at the Elks Club. Darren McCarty was there talking about his medical marijuana and his issues and those types of things. But, I'll be fast. To me, when they talk about a safer Allen Park, those signs that you see out there, people are asking me, is that a millage for our police and fire? It has nothing to do with our police and fire, okay? It's not a millage to add more money to police and fire. It's a millage to bring marijuana into the city of Allen Park. I have residents telling me, you know, I don't want it in my neighborhood. It's supposed to be 1,000 feet away. There's all those guidelines there. But recreational marijuana, as it's written on our ballot, is not for our community. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Gail McCoy.
Good evening, my name is Gail McLeod. I am the current mayor pro tem on the city council. I have lived in Allen Park for over 40 years, where I raised my 3 children who all graduated from Allen Park High School. I am a graduate of the University of Detroit with a bachelor's degree in personnel administration.
Our first question, discuss a key difference that exists between you and your opponent that you would like voters to consider on election day.
The key difference is my experience on many different levels. Number one, I've already done the job. As mayor pro tem for the past 4 years, I've presided over council meetings and represented our city on numerous boards. This has given me the opportunity to interact with other members of these organizations and create working relationships with them. I also served on 2 council committees, the Legal Affairs and Human Resources. Number 2, when the city was placed under state control as a result of the movie studio fiasco, which cost us millions of dollars, I co-chaired the Emergency Managers Advisory Committee and helped facilitate multiple citywide meetings to gain input from our residents regarding their thoughts and ideas on how to move us forward. Number 3, I am a founding member and current director of the nonprofit Allen Park Citizen Civic Fund, which seeks financial support for our community through grants and other funding sources, not taxpayer money. For example, we raised $14,000 to defray costs for the new roof on the historic home and worked with local businesses to donate items such as the new hot water tank at the historic home and paint and other material for 23 little libraries, which, by the way, were built by the Allen Park Shop Class and decorated by the Allen Park High School Art Department. We were awarded grants for park improvements, like the game equipment in the Pocket Park in downtown Allen Park, and the installation of the 23 little libraries in all of our city parks. We currently have several major grants in process, and are anxiously awaiting final approval on one of them that will have a tremendous impact on one of our city facilities. Number 4, as a retired human resources manager with over 20 years of experience, I have extensive knowledge dealing with administration, budgets, and organizational restructuring. I know how to lead, and this skill is going to be especially critical for an all-new council. Last but not least, I am retired and available to dedicate the time required to meet with city administration and government agencies, as well as the residents of the city. With that in mind, I intend to establish regular office hours so that residents can meet with me to discuss their concerns.
The issue of shared services isn't new to the Downriver area, or Allen Park in specific. Do you support a movement towards shared services for police and fire at this time?
Well, to those of you who have stayed around, this is going to seem redundant, but I am not in favor of shared services for our police and fire. Through the Downriver Mutual Aid, as you've heard, we do have an agreement with neighboring communities to help one another in times of critical emergencies. But this is quite different from shared services. I would be open to exploring ideas for sharing other services or facilities within the city, such as parks and recreation and our schools, in an effort to create additional recreational options for our citizens.
Allen Park has been plagued with basement flooding for decades. As a city council member, what will you do to alleviate this ongoing problem?
This subject is particularly frustrating since I've been through it myself. Studies have been conducted by Wayne County and the Army Corps of Engineers, and reports presented with multiple options, all of which require legislative approval from county or federal agencies. We cannot wait. We need to determine what can be done as a community and as a region. Action is needed now. I plan on meeting with communities who are also affected with the objective of finding solutions, even a solution as simple as making sure that debris which blocks the flow of water in Ecorse Creek is regularly cleared out by Wayne County, so that residents in that area do not experience flooding.
In November, residents of Allen Park will be asked to consider a ballot proposal regarding marijuana establishments within the city limits. What is your position on this proposal?
I do not support the proposal, and I will vote no in November. I've done my research. The Colorado Department of Public Safety website has a lot of information, both positive and negative, regarding crime and public safety. My concern is that under federal law, marijuana is still an illegal substance, and therefore a cash-only business. This raises concerns about safety and security. If elected mayor and the proposal is approved, I will make sure that state laws are followed and business locations adhere to city zoning ordinances so they do not negatively impact our residents' safety and quality of life.
What do you feel is the most pressing issue facing Allen Park in 2020?
Continued financial stability and economic growth are the main issues. Although property values are rising, we are only at about 65% of 2007 taxable values, and city income remains below peak levels. In addition, the state has reduced revenue sharing and will make sure we have highly qualified individuals to manage our finances and spending, work with city departments and community organizations to identify areas for potential growth, and pursue other funding sources to support improvements in our city and offset other expenses. We'll also develop liaisons with local community leaders and legislators with the goal of pursuing legislation more equitable to local communities. Thank you.
We each get 1 minute for closing remarks. Starting back again will be Kevin Horton.
Thank you.
up my third term, and I understand the importance of city services and the needs of you. We continue to address the concerns of ordinance enforcement, roads, public safety, millages, and flooding, and we'll do that with the next council. The literature that you have, if you picked it out front, there's an acronym on it that spells out ROAR. R is for responding to your calls. O is for open-minded to listen to your ideas and be your voice at the council table. U is for understanding the plight of our senior citizens. Recreation programs for our youth, seniors, and families. K is for keeping Allen Park beautiful to maintain home values. E is for enforcement of our ordinances as a must for every progressive city. The interesting thing about that is that was my dad's acronym 50 years ago. As much as things change, they still say the same. And Allen Park can move forward because of the love that you guys have for this city and the guidance and support that you give us, the council, every time you come to a council meeting. So whether I make it or not, my phone number's in the book. Continue to call, and I'll work for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Gail McLeod.
It seems like I just left here. Thanks to everyone for attending and to the students and others who organized this event. I especially want to thank the teachers for instilling civic responsibility in our students. We have some important decisions to make on November 5, and I encourage everyone to exercise their right to vote. If you walk away with only a few things you've learned about me tonight, walk away with these. First, I do not view the position of mayor, nor any of the positions on council, as positions of power. They are, in fact, positions of great responsibility. Responsibility for the well-being of every resident, employee, and business in our community. Second, I am a firm believer that communication and information are crucial to the success of any organization, and I intend to provide our residents with as much information as possible on any and all projects in our city. Well-informed residents are engaged residents, and I am confident that by working together and communicating effectively with one another, we can achieve positive results and will continue to move our city forward. Thank you again.
This year's Meet the Candidate event is in dedication and in loving memory to Mr. Robert Lloyd. Mr. Lloyd taught his students by leading by example. He loved the gift of democracy and regularly attended and spoke at city council meetings as well as Board of Education meetings. After recently retiring, he ran for and was elected to the Board of Education. Democracy is not a spectator sport, was often Mr. Lloyd's sentiment. With his colleagues, he created this event. He believed that participation in community and politics is the very pillar that keeps this country free. Meet the Candidate Night was made not only for the citizens of Allen Park, but for the students, who may not yet be voters, to begin being actively involved in their local government. This event allows students to challenge their leaders and invest in their immediate futures as citizens of Allen Park, as well as this great nation. Thank you, Mr. Lloyd, for leaving us this legacy. May we always participate. That concludes the 2019 Candidate Forum. A special thank you to our candidates for coming out tonight, the audience, our sponsors, and Mr. Berkey, Mrs. West, Mr. Slate, Ms. Richardson, and our high school administration for making this possible. Good night, everyone.